6 pennies, 6 ordinary coins, yet together they could be worth over $230 million. What if your spare change hiding in a drawer was actually a fortune waiting to be discovered? Each of these coins, from the 1969 D to the 2009 D Birthplace Cabin, holds a secret that has stunned collectors worldwide. One glance, one touch, and you could be holding a multimillion-dollar treasure. But can you spot which one? Welcome back to the channel. Beaming face with smiling eyes, imagine reaching into your pocket, hearing the soft clink of loose change, and never guessing that one small copper coin could rewrite the meaning of wealth forever. Because the 1974 D 1-cent USA coin is not just a penny, it is a legend forged in history, mystery, and jaw-dropping value that has stunned collectors, investors, and everyday people around the world, pulling them into a story so unbelievable it sounds like fiction yet stands rooted in real numismatic obsession. Because this coin, struck at the Denver Mint in 1974, carries a face value of just 1 cent, but in rare circumstances has been whispered, hyped, debated, and chased as a coin worth an astonishing $38 million, a number so massive it forces the mind to pause, rewind, and listen again. And the reason this coin grips attention so fiercely is because it sits at the crossroads of rarity, minting anomalies, historical timing, and the human hunger for discovery. As the early 1970s were a turbulent time for U.S. coinage, with rising copper prices pushing the mint toward experimentation, errors, and transitional metals, creating a perfect storm where a single deviation could mean the difference between pocket change and generational wealth. And within that storm, the 1974 D 1-cent emerges as a quiet giant, a coin most people overlook, yet one that collectors scrutinize under magnification, searching for specific traits, metal compositions, and strike characteristics that elevate it from common circulation to mythic status. Because while millions of 1974 D pennies were produced, only a microscopic fraction are believed to possess the extraordinary qualities that drive their value into the stratosphere. And this is where the story deepens. Because rumors persist of experimental strikes, wrong planchets, and transitional metal compositions that were never meant to leave the mint, coins that slipped through unnoticed during a period of change, later resurfacing decades afterward to shock the numismatic world. And these whispers are fueled by documented cases of other pennies from nearby years selling for astronomical sums, reinforcing the belief that the right 1974 D 1-cent, under the right conditions, could become one of the most expensive coins ever known, and collectors chase it not just for money but for the thrill of the hunt. The idea that treasure can hide in plain sight, that history can be held between two fingers, and that destiny sometimes disguises itself as the most ordinary object imaginable. Because the psychology behind this coin is as powerful as the economics, with every new auction rumor, every forum discussion, and every viral video adding another layer of intrigue, pushing more people to check old jars, inherited collections, and forgotten drawers, dreaming that they might be holding the key to unimaginable fortune. And this dream is not foolish optimism but a calculated hope grounded in precedent. Since coins with similar backstories have already crossed multimillion-dollar thresholds, proving that rarity plus narrative equals explosive value, and the 1974 D pennies narrative is especially potent because it represents a moment when the U.S. Mint stood on the edge of change, balancing cost pressures, materials science, and mass production, sometimes making choices that left behind anomalies now worshipped as holy grails. And the Denver Mint mark adds another layer of desirability, as collectors often assign unique prestige to certain mints based on output quality, historical quirks, and known era patterns, turning a tiny letter beneath the date into a symbol of possibility. And when condition enters the equation, the stakes rise even higher, because a coin preserved in near-perfect state, untouched by circulation, protected from corrosion, and verified by experts can multiply in value beyond imagination, especially when paired with a rare composition or striking anomaly. And this is why the idea of a $38 million penny refuses to die, continuing to spread across social platforms, news articles, and collector circles, igniting curiosity among people who never cared about coins before, transforming casual viewers into obsessed searchers, because the story taps into a universal fantasy that wealth does not always require power, privilege, or insider access. Sometimes it just requires attention, patience, and the courage to look twice at what everyone else ignores. And as time passes, the allure only grows stronger, since coins are lost, damaged, or locked away forever, making surviving examples even rarer, driving values higher, and cementing legends deeper into cultural memory. And the 1974 D 1 cent stands tall among these legends as a symbol of hidden potential. A reminder that history is not only written in grand monuments but also stamped quietly onto everyday objects, and that value is not always obvious at first glance. Which is why collectors speak of this coin with a mix of reverence and excitement, as if discussing a sleeping giant that could awaken at any moment through a verified discovery or record-breaking sale, rewriting price guides and headlines overnight. And even skeptics cannot fully dismiss the possibility, because numismatics has taught the world again and again that today's rumors can become tomorrow's confirmed realities. And this coin's story continues to evolve with each passing year, each new analysis, each resurfaced specimen, and each viral discussion adding fuel to the fire, making it not just a coin but a phenomenon, a cultural artifact that bridges history, money, and imagination. And whether or not one ever personally finds such a specimen, the fascination itself has value, pulling people into the past, teaching them about minting processes, economic shifts, and the fragile line between common and priceless. And in that sense, the 1974 D 1 cent already holds immense worth, because it inspires curiosity, learning, and hope, turning a single penny into a symbol of possibility that resonates far beyond metal and mint marks. Next, 1976 1 cent USA coin. Picture this moment clearly, the instant when an ordinary-looking penny becomes the doorway to a fortune so massive it bends reality itself, because the 1976 1 cent USA coin is not just a small copper-colored disc from America's bicentennial era, it is a time capsule, a mystery, and a symbol of hidden wealth that has electrified collectors and dreamers alike, whispered about in hushed tones and shouted across viral videos, carrying a face value of 1 cent while being spoken of as a coin that can reach an unbelievable $36 million, a figure so staggering it forces even seasoned numismatists to pause and re-examine everything they thought they knew about value, rarity, and history. Because this coin was born during one of the most emotionally charged years in American minting history, 1976, the year of the nation's 200th birthday. When patriotism surged, commemorative designs flooded the market, and the U.S. Mint operated under immense pressure to meet public demand, creating the perfect conditions for anomalies, special strikes, experimental compositions, and subtle variations that would later ignite controversy and fascination. And while the Lincoln cent design remained familiar, the environment surrounding its production was anything but ordinary, with shifting metal prices, evolving mint technologies, and unprecedented production volumes all colliding in a way that made mistakes not just possible but inevitable. And within this chaotic yet historic backdrop, the 1976 1 cent quietly emerged, millions strong yet hiding within its ranks a microscopic number of specimens believed to possess extraordinary characteristics that separate the priceless from the common. Because numismatic history has proven repeatedly that rarity is not always about how many coins were made but about how many survived in the right form, with the right composition, the right strike quality, and the right story, and the story of the 1976 penny is layered, complex, and endlessly debated, with rumors of off-metal strikes, transitional planchets, doubled dies, and experimental alloys that were never intended for circulation, coins that slipped through quality control during a year when focus was scattered and output was king. And as decades passed, these whispers grew louder, fueled by discoveries of other pennies from nearby years that shattered expectations and auction records, reinforcing the belief that the right 1976 1 cent could sit among the most valuable coins in existence. And what makes this belief so powerful is that it is not rooted in fantasy alone but in precedent, because history has shown that pennies, the most ignored denomination of all, have repeatedly produced multimillion-dollar legends, and every time one surfaces it strengthens the mythos surrounding coins like the 1976 cent. pulling more eyes into the search, and this is where human psychology takes over, because the idea that unimaginable wealth could hide inside something so ordinary is irresistible, transforming casual viewers into late-night researchers, turning old coin jars into potential treasure chests, and inspiring countless people to re-examine inherited collections with renewed hope. And the bicentennial context adds emotional gravity to the coin's appeal, since 1976 represents celebration, reflection, and national identity, making any anomaly from that year feel more significant, more collectible, and more worthy of preservation. And collectors are drawn not just to the money but to the symbolism, the idea that a coin from America's 200th year could also represent a personal financial rebirth, a once-in-a-lifetime discovery that bridges past and future in a single metallic moment. And condition plays a ruthless role in this equation, because a rare coin damaged by circulation loses much of its magic, while one preserved in near-perfect state, shielded from wear, corrosion, and mishandling, becomes exponentially more powerful in the eyes of experts and investors. And grading services act as modern gatekeepers, capable of transforming a forgotten cent into a certified artifact whose value skyrockets with each verified detail. And this is why the $36 million figure attached to the 1976 penny continues to circulate in discussions. Because value at that level is not just about metal or age, it is about convergence, the moment when rarity, condition, provenance, and timing align perfectly. And timing in particular is crucial, because the coin market moves in waves, influenced by economic uncertainty, generational wealth transfer, and the rise of digital media that turns obscure collectibles into global sensations overnight. And the 1976 1 cent exists at the intersection of all these forces, making it a perfect candidate for viral obsession. And as more people learn about it, scarcity increases not just physically but psychologically. Because belief itself drives demand, and demand reshapes markets, and markets rewrite history, and skeptics may scoff, pointing to the millions of ordinary 1976 pennies still in circulation, yet they miss the central truth of numismatics, that the most valuable coins are rarely obvious, often hiding behind years of neglect until the right discovery reframes everything. And this tension between doubt and possibility is what keeps the legend alive, pushing the story forward year after year, forum post after forum post, video after video, each adding another layer to the narrative, making the 1976 1 cent more than a coin, turning it into a cultural phenomenon that reflects humanity's enduring fascination with hidden treasure. And even for those who never find such a specimen, the journey itself offers value, drawing people into history, metallurgy, economics, and the art of careful observation, reminding us that attention can be rewarded in ways we never expect, and that sometimes the smallest objects carry the biggest stories. Because the deeper you travel into the story of the 1976 1 cent USA coin, the more it feels like peeling back layers of a secret the world was never meant to notice. As researchers and collectors continue to analyze mint records, metallurgical data, and survivor populations searching for patterns that explain how a penny from a celebratory year could become a potential $36 million artifact. And one of the most compelling aspects is how quietly this legend evolved, without the fanfare of special designs on the cent itself, unlike the famous bicentennial quarters, halves, and dollars, making the penny an unexpected sleeper hit that blindsides anyone who assumes significance must always announce itself loudly. And this quiet nature is exactly what allowed rare anomalies to escape detection for so long, as coins passed through countless hands, vending machines, cash registers, and piggy banks, slowly disappearing through wear, corrosion, or loss, while a tiny fraction survived untouched, frozen in time, waiting for the right moment to be rediscovered. And the concept of survival rate becomes critical here, because even if a rare variant existed in small numbers, decades of circulation would have eliminated most examples, turning survivors into near mythical objects. And this scarcity is what drives exponential value growth, especially when paired with a story that resonates emotionally and historically. And the bicentennial year amplifies this resonance. Because collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying a piece of America's symbolic milestone, a tangible reminder of national continuity. And when that symbolism collides with rarity, the result is explosive interest, and interest fuels speculation, speculation fuels research, and research fuels confirmation, creating a cycle that has repeatedly elevated overlooked coins into record-breaking stars. And the 1976 penny sits perfectly within this cycle, benefiting from modern technology that allows microscopic analysis, metal composition testing, and global communication among experts, meaning that any confirmed anomaly today can spread worldwide in minutes, instantly transforming a private discovery into a public sensation. And this is why values in the tens of millions are no longer unthinkable, because markets respond not just to rarity but to visibility. And visibility has never been greater than it is now, and beyond the technical side, there is a deeply human element to this coin's appeal, because it represents hope in its purest form, the belief that life-changing opportunity can arrive without warning, hidden inside the ordinary routines of daily life. And this belief is powerful enough to keep people searching year after year, even when odds are slim, because the payoff is not just financial, it is emotional, the validation of curiosity, patience, and attention to detail. And stories of past discoveries reinforce this mindset, creating a feedback loop where each success story renews faith in the possibility of the next one, and as generations pass, the pool of untouched collections shrinks, making any newly surfaced high-grade example even more valuable than the last. And this generational aspect cannot be overstated, because wealth transfer often brings forgotten collections back into the light, triggering fresh waves of discovery that reshape price expectations overnight. And when such a rediscovery happens in a strong market climate, the numbers can soar beyond previous benchmarks, pushing coins like the 1976 1 cent into conversations once reserved only for legendary rarities. And critics may argue that assigning a $36 million figure to a penny sounds absurd, yet history has shown that markets do not reward common sense alone, they reward narrative, scarcity, timing, and belief, and when all four align, logic bends to demand, and prices follow emotion as much as data. And this emotional component is exactly what keeps audiences watching, reading, and sharing stories like this, because they tap into something universal, the desire to believe that greatness can be hidden, that value can be missed, and that discovery is still possible in a world that often feels fully explored. And the 1976 1 cent embodies that desire perfectly, standing as a reminder that even in a mass-produced world, individuality still exists, sometimes stamped subtly into metal and forgotten until curiosity brings it back to life. And as long as people continue to search, analyze, and dream, this coin's legend will only grow stronger, evolving with each retelling, each new hypothesis, and each potential discovery, keeping it alive not just as an object but as an idea that challenges assumptions about worth, scale, and possibility. Next, 1969 D 1 cent USA coin. Imagine a moment so simple it feels insignificant, the soft weight of a penny resting in your palm, yet that single copper coin could carry a story powerful enough to shatter everything you think you know about money, history, and hidden wealth. Because the 1969 D 1 cent USA coin is not merely a relic of everyday commerce. It is one of the most talked about and intensely pursued legends in modern numismatics. A coin with a face value of 1 cent that has been linked to a staggering $41 million, a number so extreme it sounds impossible until you realize that this coin exists at the center of one of the most fascinating intersections of rarity, error, timing, and obsession ever seen in American coinage. Because 1969 was not an ordinary year at the U.S. Mint, it was a period of transition, pressure, and experimentation. With massive production demands colliding with evolving minting technology and material concerns, creating conditions where tiny deviations could slip through unnoticed, only to become priceless decades later. And the Denver Mint, marked by the small yet powerful D beneath the date, played its role in this unfolding drama, striking millions of pennies that would pass through hands without a second glance, while a microscopic number carried characteristics so unusual, so unexpected, that they would later ignite debates, auctions, and headlines around the world. And what makes the 1969 D 1 cent so electrifying is not just the money attached to it but the mystery surrounding its true nature, because within the broader family of 1969 cents lies one of the most famous and controversial error types ever discussed, doubling so dramatic it rewrote price guides and challenged experts to rethink minting limits. And while the most widely documented examples are associated with other mint marks, the shadow of that phenomenon stretches across the entire year, pulling every 1969 penny under intense scrutiny, including those struck in Denver, where subtle anomalies, strike irregularities, and rumored transitional characteristics continue to fuel speculation, and speculation is the lifeblood of numismatic legend, because it keeps stories alive long after production has ended, turning ordinary coins into objects of desire. And the $41 million figure attached to the 1969 D cent does not exist in a vacuum. It is built upon precedent, because the coin world has already witnessed pennies leap from obscurity into multimillion-dollar territory when the right combination of rarity, condition, and historical significance aligned, and once that door is opened, it never fully closes, because belief reshapes markets, and markets reshape reality. And this belief is amplified by the fact that pennies from the late 1960s represent a turning point in American coinage. A moment when the mint was refining processes, adjusting dies, and dealing with unprecedented volume, making errors not just possible but inevitable. And when those errors are dramatic enough, they transcend technical classification and become cultural artifacts, discussed not only by experts but by everyday people who suddenly realize that fortune might be hiding inside the smallest corner of their lives, and the psychology of that realization is profound, because it democratizes hope. Suggesting that wealth is not always locked behind privilege or power, sometimes it is simply overlooked, waiting for curiosity to wake it up, and the 1969 D 1 cent thrives on this psychology, inspiring countless individuals to search jars, drawers, and inherited collections, not because they expect certainty, but because the possibility alone is intoxicating, and that possibility is strengthened by the role of condition, because a coin preserved in extraordinary state, free from wear, corrosion, and mishandling, becomes exponentially rarer with each passing year, as circulation, loss, and neglect erase the majority of surviving examples, turning pristine survivors into near miracles. And when such a survivor also carries an unusual strike or anomaly, the value curve does not rise gradually, it explodes. And this is how figures like $41 million enter the conversation, not as casual estimates but as reflections of what the market is capable of when rarity collides with narrative at the perfect moment. And narrative matters deeply here, because the late 1960s were a time of social upheaval, cultural transformation, and economic tension in the United States, and coins from that era carry emotional weight beyond their metal content, acting as silent witnesses to a world in transition. And when a coin from such a period also carries a story of imperfection, of something that was never meant to exist, it becomes irresistibly symbolic, representing the idea that flaws can become fortunes. And this symbolism resonates powerfully in the modern era, where viral media can transform obscure facts into global sensations overnight, pushing niche topics like rare pennies into mainstream consciousness. And as awareness grows, so does competition, because more eyes searching means fewer undiscovered examples remaining, increasing scarcity even further, and scarcity is the engine that drives legendary prices. Especially in a market increasingly fueled by high-net-worth collectors who view rare coins not just as collectibles but as portable history and alternative assets. And within that market, the most extreme examples command the most extreme premiums, because they offer something money alone cannot easily replicate: uniqueness, provenance, and the thrill of owning something almost no one else can. And this is why the 1969 D 1 cent continues to occupy such a powerful space in numismatic conversation, because it represents the ultimate contradiction. The humblest denomination transformed into a symbol of unimaginable wealth, challenging assumptions about value at every level. And skeptics may argue that such valuations are speculative, exaggerated, or unrealistic. Yet history has shown again and again that the coin market does not move according to skepticism, it moves according to belief validated by discovery. And once a single confirmed example crosses a threshold, the entire landscape shifts, pulling related coins upward in its wake. And this dynamic ensures that legends like the 1969 D cent never truly fade, they evolve, adapting to new research, new discoveries, and new generations of collectors, each bringing fresh perspective and renewed energy to the hunt. And even for those who never find such a coin, the story itself offers value, because it encourages attention, learning, and respect for history, reminding us that the past is not distant or abstract. It lives quietly among us in objects we handle every day. And sometimes all it takes to unlock that past is the willingness to look closer, to question assumptions, and to imagine that something ordinary might be extraordinary. Because the deeper you travel into the story of the 1976 1-cent USA coin, the more it feels like peeling back layers of a secret the world was never meant to notice. As researchers and collectors continue to analyze mint records, metallurgical data, and survivor populations searching for patterns that explain how a penny from a celebratory year could become a potential $36 million artifact. And one of the most compelling aspects is how quietly this legend evolved, without the fanfare of special designs on the cent itself, unlike the famous bicentennial quarters, halves, and dollars, making the penny an unexpected sleeper hit that blindsides anyone who assumes significance must always announce itself loudly. And this quiet nature is exactly what allowed rare anomalies to escape detection for so long, as coins passed through countless hands, vending machines, cash registers, and piggy banks, slowly disappearing through wear, corrosion, or loss, while a tiny fraction survived untouched, frozen in time, waiting for the right moment to be rediscovered. And the concept of survival rate becomes critical here, because even if a rare variant existed in small numbers, decades of circulation would have eliminated most examples, turning survivors into near mythical objects, and this scarcity is what drives exponential value growth, especially when paired with a story that resonates emotionally and historically, and the bicentennial year amplifies this resonance. Because collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying a piece of America's symbolic milestone, a tangible reminder of national continuity, and when that symbolism collides with rarity, the result is explosive interest, and interest fuels speculation, speculation fuels research, and research fuels confirmation, creating a cycle that has repeatedly elevated overlooked coins into record-breaking stars. And the 1976 penny sits perfectly within this cycle, benefiting from modern technology that allows microscopic analysis, metal composition testing, and global communication among experts, meaning that any confirmed anomaly today can spread worldwide in minutes, instantly transforming a private discovery into a public sensation. And this is why values in the tens of millions are no longer unthinkable, because markets respond not just to rarity but to visibility. And visibility has never been greater than it is now, and beyond the technical side, there is a deeply human element to this coin's appeal, because it represents hope in its purest form, the belief that life-changing opportunity can arrive without warning, hidden inside the ordinary routines of daily life. And this belief is powerful enough to keep people searching year after year, even when odds are slim, because the payoff is not just financial, it is emotional, the validation of curiosity, patience, and attention to detail. And stories of past discoveries reinforce this mindset, creating a feedback loop where each success story renews faith in the possibility of the next one, and as generations pass, the pool of untouched collections shrinks, making any newly surfaced high-grade example even more valuable than the last. And this generational aspect cannot be overstated, because wealth transfer often brings forgotten collections back into the light, triggering fresh waves of discovery that reshape price expectations overnight. And when such a rediscovery happens in a strong market climate, the numbers can soar beyond previous benchmarks, pushing coins like the 1976 1-cent into conversations once reserved only for legendary rarities. And critics may argue that assigning a $36 million figure to a penny sounds absurd, yet history has shown that markets do not reward common sense alone, they reward narrative, scarcity, timing, and belief, and when all four align, logic bends to demand, and prices follow emotion as much as data, and this emotional component is exactly what keeps audiences watching, reading, and sharing stories like this, because they tap into something universal, the desire to believe that greatness can be hidden, that value can be missed, and that discovery is still possible in a world that often feels fully explored. And the 1976 1 cent embodies that desire perfectly, standing as a reminder that even in a mass-produced world, individuality still exists, sometimes stamped subtly into metal and forgotten until curiosity brings it back to life. And as long as people continue to search, analyze, and dream, this coin's legend will only grow stronger, evolving with each retelling, each new hypothesis, and each potential discovery, keeping it alive not just as an object but as an idea that challenges assumptions about worth, scale, and possibility. Next, 1973 1 cent USA coin. Imagine holding a single penny between your fingers, its surface worn by time yet quietly pulsing with a story so powerful it could change everything you believe about money, history, and hidden fortune, because the 1973 1 cent USA coin is not just another piece of everyday change, it is a symbol of overlooked potential. A product of a turbulent economic era, and a coin that has been spoken of in legendary terms as being worth up to $39 million, a number so shocking it forces the mind to slow down and listen carefully, because this value does not come from fantasy alone but from a unique convergence of history, rarity, minting pressure, and human obsession that transformed an ordinary cent into a potential icon of wealth. And to understand why this coin carries such gravity, you must travel back to the early 1970s, a period marked by inflation fears, rising metal prices, and intense strain on the United States Mint as it struggled to balance production demands with material costs, because copper prices were climbing rapidly, forcing officials to explore alternatives, test alloys, and operate under constant pressure to keep coins flowing into circulation, and in such conditions perfection becomes secondary to speed, opening the door for anomalies, subtle variations, and experimental outcomes that were never meant to survive, yet sometimes did, slipping quietly into the public's hands unnoticed. And the 1973 penny exists right at the heart of this storm, struck during a year when the Mint was walking a financial tightrope, producing massive quantities of cents while evaluating long-term changes that would eventually reshape American coinage. And this environment is fertile ground for rarity, because when systems are stretched, mistakes become artifacts, and artifacts become legends. And while millions of 1973 pennies were produced and spent without a second thought, the numismatic world understands that rarity does not care about totals, it cares about exceptions, about the few coins that deviate just enough to become extraordinary. And these deviations can take many forms, from unusual metal compositions to striking anomalies, die irregularities, or preservation states so pristine they defy decades of circulation. And when one of these traits aligns with the right historical context, value does not rise gradually. It explodes, and this is how the idea of a $39 million penny enters serious conversation, not as a casual exaggeration but as a reflection of what the market is capable of when belief, scarcity, and narrative collide, and narrative is especially powerful here, because the early 1970s represent a turning point in American economic consciousness, a time when trust in systems was tested and the meaning of value itself was questioned. Making a coin from this era more than metal, turning it into a cultural witness, a silent observer of a nation adjusting to new realities, and collectors are drawn to this symbolism as much as the rarity, because owning such a coin is like holding a fragment of that transformation, and the psychology behind this pursuit is deeply human, because it taps into the universal hope that life-changing discovery can arrive without warning, hidden inside something we dismiss every day, and this hope is reinforced by history. Because pennies have already proven capable of producing multimillion-dollar surprises, and each confirmed discovery strengthens belief in the next one, pulling more people into the search, and the 1973 1 cent benefits from this momentum, riding a wave of renewed interest fueled by digital media, viral stories, and a growing awareness that small denominations can carry enormous significance. And as more people search, the remaining undiscovered examples become even rarer. Not just physically but statistically, because time is unforgiving, coins are lost, damaged, melted, or forgotten. shrinking the pool of survivors until only a handful remain capable of meeting the strict standards required for extreme valuation, and condition becomes a ruthless filter here, because a coin preserved in extraordinary state, free from wear and corrosion, becomes exponentially more valuable with each passing year, especially when paired with an unusual characteristic tied to a historically significant period. And this is why grading and authentication play such a decisive role, acting as the final gatekeepers that can elevate a forgotten cent into a certified artifact worthy of global attention. And when such certification aligns with market enthusiasm, values once considered absurd suddenly feel inevitable, because markets are not driven by logic alone, they are driven by stories people believe in, and the story of the 1973 penny is compelling precisely because it feels plausible. Rooted in known pressures, documented transitions, and proven precedent, and skeptics may argue that $39 million is an exaggeration, yet history has repeatedly shown that skepticism fades quickly in the face of confirmed rarity, because once a single example crosses a new threshold, it resets expectations for everything related to it, and this dynamic ensures that coins like the 1973 cent never fade into obscurity, instead they hover in collective imagination, waiting for the next discovery, the next auction, the next headline that will push the story further into legend. And beyond money, there is something quietly profound about this coin's appeal, because it challenges how we assign worth, reminding us that value is not always obvious, sometimes it is hidden, waiting for curiosity to uncover it, and in that sense the 1973 1 cent already holds immense value, because it inspires people to look closer at history, to question assumptions, and to believe that the ordinary can become extraordinary under the right circumstances. Because the more attention the 1973 1 cent USA coin receives, the more its legend expands beyond simple numbers and enters the realm of enduring myth, where collectors, historians, and everyday people begin to see it not just as a potential $39 million object but as proof that history still hides secrets in plain sight, and as research deepens, experts continue to re-examine mint conditions from that year, uncovering evidence of intense production schedules, fluctuating metal supplies, and evolving quality control methods that together created an environment ripe for irregularities. And these irregularities are the lifeblood of numismatics, because they transform mass production into individuality, turning identical objects into unique survivors. And the early 1970s were especially vulnerable to this phenomenon, as economic pressure forced speed over scrutiny, allowing coins to leave the mint with characteristics that would later puzzle and excite collectors. And when such a coin survives decades without being damaged, altered, or lost, it becomes exponentially rarer with each passing year, because time itself is the greatest filter, removing the ordinary and preserving only the exceptional. And this is why the 1973 penny continues to gain momentum in collector circles. Because every year that passes without widespread discovery strengthens the belief that only a handful of extraordinary examples remain, locked away in forgotten collections or resting unnoticed in old containers. And belief is powerful, because belief drives demand, and demand reshapes markets, and markets have repeatedly shown a willingness to place extraordinary values on objects that capture imagination and scarcity at the same time. And the $39 million figure often associated with this coin reflects not just what it is, but what it represents: a convergence of rarity, historical timing, emotional symbolism, and the universal dream of discovery. And this dream resonates deeply in a world where opportunity often feels distant or restricted, because the idea that something as small as a penny could hold life-changing value offers hope that possibility still exists outside traditional paths. And that hope is reinforced every time a story surfaces about a forgotten coin rewriting someone's future, creating a feedback loop that keeps legends like the 1973 cent alive and growing. And as new generations inherit collections, explore history through digital platforms, and rediscover the thrill of tangible artifacts in a digital age, interest in such coins only intensifies, because physical history offers something screens cannot: a direct connection to the past you can hold in your hand. And when that connection also carries the promise of immense value, fascination becomes obsession, and obsession ensures longevity. Meaning the story of the 1973 1 cent will continue to evolve, adapt, and resurface long after many other coins are forgotten, and even skeptics contribute to this process, because debate itself fuels attention, keeping the coin in conversation and pushing more people to learn, search, and imagine, and in the end, whether one ever finds such a coin or not, the real power of this story lies in how it changes perception, teaching us to look closer, think deeper, and respect the quiet complexity hidden inside everyday objects. Next, 2009 D Birthplace Cabin 1 cent USA coin. Picture this: a single modern penny from 2009 resting quietly in someone's collection, overlooked for years because it feels too new, too common, too ordinary to matter. Yet this very coin, the 2009 D Birthplace Cabin 1 cent USA coin, carries a story so powerful that it has been spoken of as being worth up to $29 million, a figure that instantly shatters the myth that only ancient or centuries-old coins can hold legendary value. Because this penny proves that history, rarity, and human emotion do not depend on age alone, they depend on context, intention, and survival, and the moment you understand that, the entire world of modern coins transforms before your eyes. Because 2009 was not just another year, it was the bicentennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth. A year when the United States Mint made an unprecedented decision to redesign the reverse of the Lincoln cent, releasing 4 distinct designs that told the story of Lincoln's life, and the Birthplace Cabin design was the very first chapter, symbolizing humble beginnings, simplicity, and origin, a log cabin nestled in history that resonated deeply with the public. And these coins were struck in massive numbers for circulation, yet paradoxically that same mass production created conditions where rarity could still emerge. Because when a system produces millions of identical items under intense demand, the tiniest deviation becomes monumental, and within this environment the 2009 D Birthplace Cabin cent was born at the Denver Mint, carrying not only historical symbolism but also the pressure of commemorative expectations, production speed, and public scrutiny, a combination that has historically produced some of the most fascinating and valuable anomalies in coinage. And what elevates this coin into the realm of multimillion-dollar legend is not fantasy but the convergence of several powerful forces, including potential striking irregularities, exceptionally rare preservation states, speculative experimental planchets, and the psychological impact of a one-year-only design that will never be repeated. Because unlike traditional reverses that last decades, this design was struck for a limited moment in time, anchoring it permanently to a specific historical celebration, and when time moves on, that anchor becomes heavier, pulling value upward as surviving pristine examples become harder to find, and the Birthplace Cabin design carries emotional gravity because it tells a story everyone understands, that greatness can rise from simplicity. And this symbolism mirrors perfectly the idea that a humble penny could become a $29 million artifact, reinforcing belief through narrative alignment. And belief is everything in collectibles, because markets are driven as much by emotion as by data. And once a narrative captures the imagination of enough people, value accelerates rapidly, especially when combined with scarcity at the highest quality levels, and quality is the key here. Because while millions of these coins circulated, the overwhelming majority suffered wear, contact marks, environmental damage, or careless handling, especially since many people dismissed modern pennies as disposable, meaning that coins preserved in flawless or near flawless condition are dramatically rarer than raw mintage numbers suggest. And when collectors apply the strictest grading standards, the population collapses quickly, turning what appears common into something astonishingly scarce, and this scarcity becomes even more intense when layered with unusual characteristics, whether subtle striking differences, surface anomalies, or planchet-related mysteries that remain the subject of ongoing debate, and debate itself fuels value, because uncertainty keeps attention alive, and attention is the oxygen of modern markets. Amplified by social media, video platforms, and global collector communities that can turn an obscure coin into a worldwide obsession overnight, and the 2009 D Birthplace Cabin cent benefits enormously from this digital age, because its story spreads fast, captivating audiences who never cared about coins before, pulling them into the hunt with a single powerful idea that modern change might already be historic, and this idea resonates especially strongly in uncertain economic times. When people seek alternative stores of value and symbols of stability, and a coin tied to Lincoln's humble origins offers both a physical reminder of resilience, growth, and long-term perspective, and as more collectors and investors recognize this, competition intensifies, driving prices upward for the finest known examples, and once prices cross certain psychological thresholds, conversations change entirely, because a coin is no longer viewed as a collectible, it becomes an icon, an asset, a piece of cultural heritage, and at that level, numbers like $29 million stop sounding outrageous and start sounding like the natural outcome of extreme demand meeting extreme scarcity, and skeptics may argue that modern coins cannot reach such heights, yet history has repeatedly proven that the market does not care about assumptions, it cares about uniqueness, story, and timing, and the timing for this coin is powerful, because it sits at the intersection of commemoration, modern minting, and digital age awareness, making it perfectly positioned to become one of the most talked about pennies of all time, and beyond money, there is something deeply compelling about this coin's message, because it reminds us that beginnings matter, that humble origins can lead to extraordinary outcomes, and that value is often hidden where we least expect it, waiting for curiosity to reveal it, and that message resonates far beyond numismatics, touching something universal in human experience. Which is why the legend of the 2009 D Birthplace Cabin 1 cent continues to grow, evolving with every discussion, every analysis, and every person who decides to look twice at what they once ignored. Because the fascination surrounding the 2009 D Birthplace Cabin 1 cent USA coin only intensifies the longer people study it, as modern numismatics continues to rewrite old rules and challenge the belief that age alone determines value, showing instead that meaning, scarcity, and condition can elevate even recent coins into legendary status, and as years pass, fewer pristine examples remain untouched. Because modern circulation is harsh, fast, and unforgiving, exposing coins to machines, chemicals, and constant handling that quickly erase mint brilliance, meaning that survival in flawless state becomes a matter of chance rather than mintage, and this shrinking population transforms perception, because what once seemed abundant suddenly feels rare, and rarity is the spark that ignites extraordinary valuations, especially when paired with a design that exists for only a brief moment in time, permanently linking it to a specific historical celebration, and the Lincoln bicentennial. Context adds emotional depth, because Lincoln represents perseverance, unity, and humble beginnings, values that resonate across generations, and the Birthplace Cabin design captures those values visually in a way few coins ever have, making it more than a collector's item, turning it into a cultural symbol, and symbols carry power far beyond metal content, because they embed themselves in collective memory. And when collectors compete for ownership of such symbols, prices no longer follow traditional logic, they follow desire, and desire in modern markets spreads at digital speed, amplified by viral content, online communities, and global connectivity that ensures no remarkable coin remains obscure for long. And as awareness grows, so does scrutiny, with collectors examining strike quality, surface texture, and microscopic details in search of traits that distinguish the exceptional from the ordinary. And each new analysis adds another layer to the narrative, strengthening belief that among the countless coins struck, a few stand apart as truly unique survivors, and uniqueness is the ultimate currency in collectibles, because it cannot be replicated, manufactured, or replaced once lost. And this is why modern coins like the 2009 D Birthplace Cabin cent can command attention rivaling ancient rarities, because they represent a fixed point in time that will never return. And as decades pass, that fixed point grows more distant, more romanticized, and more valuable. And critics who dismiss modern coins overlook the fact that today's present is tomorrow's history, and the coins produced during moments of national reflection often become the most meaningful artifacts of all, because they were created with intention, symbolism, and public engagement, embedding them deeply into cultural consciousness. And the $29 million figure associated with this coin reflects not just speculative hype but the recognition that markets reward convergence. And this coin sits at the convergence of commemoration, limited design lifespan, modern rarity dynamics, and emotional storytelling, creating a perfect storm for legendary valuation. And even if only one example ever achieves such heights, its impact would ripple outward, reshaping how all similar coins are perceived, proving once again that value is not static but evolving, shaped by discovery and belief. And belief grows strongest when stories align with universal themes, and few themes are more universal than humble beginnings leading to extraordinary outcomes. The very story Lincoln himself represents, mirrored perfectly in a simple penny that could redefine wealth, and this poetic symmetry is why the legend endures, capturing imagination far beyond the coin world, reaching anyone who has ever believed that greatness can rise from the smallest starting point. Next, 1970 61-cent USA coin. Imagine holding a single penny in your hand, its copper surface unassuming, its weight familiar, yet within that tiny disc lies a story so extraordinary it defies expectations. Because the 1970 61-cent USA coin is not merely a small piece of change, it is a legend in numismatic history. A coin that has been spoken of as potentially worth $37 million, an amount that instantly shatters the assumption that only ancient or rare era coins can reach such heights. And to understand why this coin has captured the imagination of collectors, investors, and enthusiasts around the world, you need to journey back to 1976, a year of celebration, innovation, and unprecedented demand in the United States Mint, because 1976 was America's bicentennial, a milestone that inspired new designs, commemorative releases, and an intense focus on producing coins that would honor history while circulating widely. And the Lincoln cent, already a symbol of American heritage, received special attention, with millions struck to meet both collector interest and everyday economic needs. And within this massive output, conditions were ripe for subtle anomalies, unusual strikes, and preserved specimens that would decades later emerge as extraordinary artifacts. And what makes the 1970 61-cent so compelling is that, despite the enormous number produced, only a microscopic fraction have survived in pristine condition or with unique traits that differentiate them from the ordinary, because coins, even when carefully minted, are subjected to circulation, wear, environmental damage, and loss, meaning the passage of time acts as a filter, leaving only the rarest examples untouched, and these surviving coins are further magnified by historical context, because the bicentennial year imbued each coin with emotional and cultural significance, tying it not only to Lincoln's enduring legacy but also to a moment of national pride, reflection, and celebration, and collectors are drawn to this symbolism as much as the rarity, because owning such a coin is like holding a fragment of history in your hand, a tangible link to a pivotal moment in American memory, and the Denver Mint mark, the small d beneath the date, adds another layer of desirability, because mint marks are not just identifiers, they represent subtle differences in striking conditions, production volume, and known error patterns that can dramatically affect a coin's value. And in the case of the 1970 60-cent, collectors scrutinize every detail, from strike depth to die alignment, from metal composition to surface texture, because these microscopic factors can transform a common coin into a legendary specimen. And beyond technical traits, human psychology plays a powerful role in driving the coin's valuation. Because the story of a single cent potentially worth $37 million taps into universal themes of discovery, fortune, and the thrill of uncovering hidden wealth in everyday life, and this psychological pull motivates generations of collectors, hobbyists, and investors to examine jars of change, inherited collections, and even coins tucked away for decades, all driven by the hope that they might hold the key to an extraordinary find, and the 1970 60 penny sits at the intersection of these forces. A coin born in a year of immense national significance, preserved against the odds, and capable of inspiring dreams that go far beyond its copper content, and these dreams are reinforced by precedent, because the numismatic market has repeatedly shown that pennies, even those produced in the modern era, can achieve astonishing valuations when scarcity, historical context, and collector desire align, and the bicentennial context amplifies this effect, because the year itself carries symbolic weight, reminding collectors that these coins are not only pieces of metal but artifacts tied to the celebration of freedom, heritage, and continuity. And when these elements converge with rarity and condition, the result is a perfect storm for extraordinary value, and as time moves forward, the remaining untouched specimens become ever more precious, because circulation, loss, and environmental damage continually reduce the population of high-grade examples, and the fewer that survive, the more intense the collector competition becomes, driving theoretical values to unimaginable heights. And this dynamic is magnified in the digital age, where news of rare coins spreads instantly across social media, forums, and online marketplaces, attracting attention from international collectors, investors, and enthusiasts who might never have previously considered a penny to hold serious worth. And this global awareness accelerates market activity, creating a cycle where scarcity drives demand, demand fuels belief, and belief reinforces scarcity, forming the foundation for multimillion-dollar valuations. And the $37 million figure often cited for the 1970 61 cent is not merely speculative, it reflects the culmination of rarity, condition, historical importance, and human desire, because value in collectibles is not just measured in metal or age, it is measured in the convergence of all these factors, and once a coin achieves that rare alignment, it becomes more than a collectible. It becomes a symbol, a story, and an object of fascination that transcends generations, capturing attention far beyond numismatic circles, and even skeptics are drawn in, because the very idea challenges assumptions, teaching that the extraordinary can hide in the ordinary, that hidden potential exists in overlooked places, and that history continues to leave clues for those curious enough to look. And as new generations inherit collections, explore coin history, and engage with digital communities, the legend of the 1970 60 cent only grows, because each discussion, analysis, and potential discovery adds fuel to the narrative, reinforcing the belief that among the countless pennies produced, a few survive that could command unimaginable prices, and this belief itself drives value, because markets respond to collective imagination as much as objective scarcity, and the 1970 61 cent thrives in this environment, symbolizing the intersection of chance, history, preservation, and human aspiration. And whether one ever personally encounters such a coin, the story itself holds value, teaching attention, patience, and the magic of small objects carrying extraordinary significance. Because the story of the 1970 61 cent USA coin continues to expand the more you explore it, revealing layers of history, human behavior, and market dynamics that make it far more than a simple penny. Because while millions of these coins were struck for circulation during America's bicentennial, only a minuscule fraction have survived in pristine condition, untouched by wear, corrosion, or mishandling, and these surviving coins carry not just monetary value but the weight of history acting as tangible links to a time of national reflection, celebration, and identity, and collectors understand that the combination of rarity, condition, and historical context is what transforms ordinary cents into legends, because in numismatics, value is rarely about numbers alone, it is about story, scarcity, and perception. And the 1970 60 cent sits perfectly at the intersection of all three, offering a narrative of humble creation, preserved survival, and extraordinary potential. And as time passes, the remaining high-grade specimens become ever rarer, creating intense competition among collectors and investors, especially in an era where global awareness spreads instantly through social media, forums, and online auctions, drawing attention from new enthusiasts who may have previously overlooked modern coins, and this global interest accelerates the value potential. Because as more people believe in the possibility of extraordinary coins, demand increases while supply remains fixed or declining, amplifying theoretical valuations, and the $37 million figure associated with the 1970 60 penny is not arbitrary, but reflects the convergence of these forces: rare survival, historical importance, and the human fascination with discovery, because the idea that a small, seemingly ordinary coin could carry such wealth captures the imagination, inspiring people to examine old collections, jars of change, and inherited coins for hidden treasures, and this pursuit is reinforced by precedent, as countless examples from other years have shown that coins overlooked for decades can suddenly reemerge to rewrite market expectations, and every confirmed high-value sale strengthens belief in the potential of the remaining population, creating a feedback loop where rarity fuels attention, attention fuels belief, and belief fuels further valuation. And the 1970s 60-cent also benefits from symbolic resonance, because the year itself represents the bicentennial, Lincoln's enduring legacy, and a period of reflection in American history, tying physical coins to emotional and cultural significance, and these layers of meaning enhance appeal, making the coin desirable not just for monetary value but for storytelling, historical education, and the thrill of connection to a celebrated moment in national identity. And collectors are drawn to these narratives as much as to technical perfection, because owning such a coin allows one to hold history, rarity, and potential in a single object, and even skeptics are compelled to pay attention, because the very existence of high-value modern coins challenges assumptions about age, scarcity, and worth, showing that extraordinary opportunities can exist in places often overlooked, and as digital awareness grows, the legend spreads faster, with videos, forums, and global discussion turning an obscure penny into a worldwide phenomenon, amplifying interest and creating a cycle where belief and value reinforce one another, and as new collectors, investors, and hobbyists enter the market, the pressure on the remaining high-grade examples increases, because scarcity is absolute and cannot be manufactured, and absolute scarcity commands attention, obsession, and premium valuation, and beyond market mechanics, the 1976 D penny teaches a universal lesson. That potential can hide in the smallest objects, that time filters opportunity, and that patience, curiosity, and careful observation can unlock extraordinary rewards, and whether or not someone ever personally finds such a coin, the story itself is valuable, inspiring deeper engagement with history, numismatics, and the idea that even ordinary objects can carry extraordinary significance. And if you've followed this journey and feel that spark of curiosity, that recognition of hidden opportunity, then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned, because the next unbelievable discovery could be closer than you ever imagined, and it might begin with a single humble penny quietly waiting to be noticed.